What's up, ladies and gentlemen? So this is the first of many what I'm going to call 10 questions podcasts. The first of my attempts at a podcast, so it is going to be proper raw. I'm going in dry on these. This means it's going to be pretty unedited. You're probably going to hear me swear quite a lot. You're probably going to hear some opinions that maybe some of you love, some of you don't like. Forgive me if I offend any of you. That was not my intention. I'm just giving you my honest opinion on a bunch of stuff that you have asked me to answer. Now, the reason I've asked you to supply the content for this is because I want to make sure that anything I put out genuinely delivers some level of value to you. Now, you have asked, thousands of you on my Instagram have asked me to cover not only my profession, personal training, fitness, health and fitness, transformations, etc., but also some general subjects, I guess because you want my sometimes unique opinion on that. So I'm very, very flattered by that, and I'll do my best to give it to you. I'm also recording this and I'll put it up on YouTube so you can watch it visually as well. You can see right now I'm recording this from inside of my living room, but it can also go onto a podcast form where you can plug it in whilst you're walking, running, doing cardio, whatever you want to do, just for some entertainment. Now, as I mentioned, there's going to be two types of podcasts that I get into right here. The first is going to be based on my profession. These are questions that you have asked me regarding training, nutrition, from both PTs and general gym goers, general public. The other one is going to be on kind of life subjects. A lot of you, I've got lists here of a few questions on both sides. Some of you asked about motivation, about paths to success, all of these types of things on the more lifestyle podcast. And on the more professional one, we've got questions like what makes a good trainer, how to keep motivation high to train, etc. So on this particular podcast, just to give you an idea whether it piques your level of interest, this is more of a professionally based podcast, a fitness-based podcast on this particular episode. So I'm going to cover those subjects one by one. Now, before I get into that, who am I? My name is Elliot Upton, as you should know by now. I'm a PT. I've been a PT for about 14 years, give or take, training for about 20 odd years, I guess, which is mad because that's half of my life I've been doing this job. But in that time, I've picked up a lot of experience. I've met thousands and thousands and thousands of people, trained thousands of people, both men and women, every age, every kind of person. I've trained many trainers, I've trained with many trainers, I've had a lot of coaching myself, I've been mentored by some of the best in the industry, including Charles Poliquin, Nick Mitchell. So I have a fairly good base of experience to answer your questions from, but it's also important to understand that generally in the fitness industry, there is not necessarily a right or wrong. One of the things I say to trainers that I mentor is that there isn't necessarily a right or wrong, providing you can justify the decisions you make. Now, a lot of the information I'm going to give you is based on my experience. It's based on a decade and a half of hands-on experience in the gym, on the gym floor, with online training, with real clients. Now, there's going to be a lot of book monkeys out there who may disagree with some of the stuff I said. There may be a lot of other people who disagree with other stuff. That's cool. We're allowed to disagree. Disagreeing is healthy. It allows us to question what we currently know and allows us to develop. So don't get offended if you hear something that you don't like. It's my opinion. It may happen. That's what makes us all unique and individual. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and why a lot of you will follow me. And that's going to be the base of knowledge that I will then deliver as much information and value to you as possible. Now, again, if you like what you hear today, please do share it. It'd be cool if we can get this out there and get people listening. Also, get onto my Instagram and submit your own questions, or put them in the comments box below on YouTube. Let me know what you want me to cover. Maybe while you're listening to this, certain subjects are going to pop into your head, which will inspire you to ask more questions, or you want something a little bit more in depth. But as I say, I am completely raw dogging this. It's going to be unedited. It's going straight out there fresh. You're going to hear me gulping away at water as I go, but I'll do my very, very best to keep it as clean as possible for you. So we're going to get into it. As I say, this one is a fitness-based podcast, so if you want to continue, you can. If you'd rather go for the lifestyle one, you can wait until the next episode. First question I got from one of you folks was, what makes a good trainer? Now, I suspect this has come from a personal trainer. A lot of personal trainers follow me, and it's a great question. Now, that question has a different answer based on the stage in a trainer's life. A great trainer isn't necessarily someone who's been doing it for 20, 30 years. In fact, some of the worst trainers I've ever met are the people who've been in the industry the longest. The reason they are the worst trainers I've met is because they think they know everything already. They're already at this point where they think, I've been doing this for years, I know what I'm doing, I don't need to learn anything new. Now, that not only in a profession of personal trainer, but in a profession, every profession, is a mistake. As soon as someone is in a position where they think they don't need to continue to educate themselves every single day. And I don't mean just the CPD points and the kind of professional development points you need to get in order to maintain a license as a trainer or as a doctor, any of these types of careers, is you need to want to learn. You need to want to take information from that's going on around you, whether that be in courses, whether that be from other trainers, both better or worse than you, from your own clients that you see every single day, and take in that information and try to figure out how to utilize it to create more value for the rest of your clients and for those around you. Now, that would be the first thing I say, that irrelevant of what stage a trainer is in, that is the most important quality for a good personal trainer. It's a willingness to learn on every single level, not only a willingness, but a need to learn, a desire to learn. Now, that doesn't just mean the technical stuff. It doesn't mean learning about stuff in the gym. The theory side of things, the practical side of things. It means wanting to learn about the psychology of your clients. It means wanting to learn how your clients tick, wanting to understand the emotional and physical responses from your clients and how to then work with them to get the best out of them. This is not something that you learn from a book. I'm sorry, it just isn't. I've been doing this for a very, very long time with some amazingly challenging clients, some amazing clients, and every single one of them throughout the history of my career has taught me a lot about how to deal with the next client. And when you think you've seen something before, when you think a client is going to be perfect, they tend to be the ones that throw the curveball at you. So it's important to understand you're going to be taking information from everything. The second attribute is going to be you need to care. Let's say you're learning everything. You need to care about your client. You need to care about the result. Now, what is the result? The result is going to vary from person to person, client to client, trainee to trainee, trainer to trainer, but you need to want it. You need to know what it is for a start. So goal setting is going to be important, but then you need to care more about that client's result than they care about it. And that's what we kind of pride ourselves on here at UP. It's what I've always prided myself on. It's what a lot of my peers and colleagues pride themselves on, is caring more than the client does and figuring out a way to get that result even when the client is fighting against you. This is a key, and this is going to be one of those things that makes a great trainer. If we were looking at it from a work point of view, one of the other things that you're going to find, if you've got any PTs listening to this who are early in your career, this is, the first 6 months, first year, first 2 or 3 years, you have to have a solid work ethic, a really solid work ethic. Because if you haven't, you're really, really going to struggle. It's important to understand that as a personal trainer, you are not working a 9 to 5. The chances are you're working a 5 to 9. You're likely to be working 14 to 18 hour days quite regularly, especially early on in your career. You need to be on that gym floor earlier than any client is there. So the first clients who come in, they see you there every day. You need to be the last person off that gym floor. So those same clients, if they come in the evening, see, God, you've been here all day. Yes, that might have, because I want to learn, I want to provide value for you, to you. You need to have an unfaltering work ethic and be willing to push. Finally, from the kind of PT side, for those PTs listening, you need to have a thick skin. You really do need to have a thick skin. This industry can get challenging for many, many people. You can carry an awful lot of weight as a personal trainer. You can carry the emotional baggage of your clients. You can carry the emotional baggage of your peers and the people you work with, as well as your own, as well as the extra stress that's going to be caused if you have relationships, children, because of the hours you're likely to work, and you're going to be exhausted quite often. These are things that you need to consider when you're a personal trainer, and are you resilient enough to really do it? This is why a large part of the industry does not do it well, because they're simply not ready to put in the effort on one or all of these factors. So my advice to you is to be prepared to work your ass off. Be prepared to work long hours. Be prepared to work whilst your feet, hands, brain and body are absolutely beaten. But again, this is where caring about your clients' results and enjoying the job and having a passion to learn more is going to pay dividends. Because if those desires are strong enough, you're going to work really, really hard to continue to push yourself as hard as you need to in order to be successful. So that is kind of the PT side of things. Now, I'm aware that a lot of you here listening to me are not PTs. So if you are a client looking at this and saying, okay, so what makes a good trainer? What should I be looking out for from a client's point of view? Now, the first thing I'll say on that, what you need to be looking for as a client for a great trainer is do not fall for he or her who shouts loudest. This is a huge mistake, but something that 99% of consumers fall for. We fall for big bright lights and big followings and, shirtless men and half naked women. That is not the decision you should be, or not the factor in which you should be making your decision. He who shouts loudest generally is shouting that loud because they have nothing else to offer. That includes on social media and also in the gym. So number one, don't fall straight down that trap. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, of course, but generally those people who are phenomenal trainers, who genuinely are great at their job and will care about you a lot, are the people who are not concentrating quite so much time on caring about their social media and how they look in their photoshopped photos. Okay. Second thing, look for a trainer who has delivered a number of results, a substantial number of results, because there are plenty out there to choose from, a substantial number of results that are similar to the one you desire for yourself. Now, what this means is if you are a 45-year-old mother of three working as a nurse with very, very limited time, I wouldn't necessarily say you should be going to a bikini athlete who coaches bikini competitors unless you want to get on stage. Why? Because what they're going to ask of you is going to be not even close to something you can do, or maybe are even willing to do based on other factors. So you have to choose the trainer that is able to get the result out of you that you need. Do they train clients like you with your same lifestyle, with similar problems, and have they delivered results to those clients? If yes, awesome. Have they delivered results to a huge range of clients, both old and young, both male and female, fully healthy or possibly injured? If you can find a trainer who has that ability, what you are doing is finding a trainer who will be able to adapt and find a way to get you to your results. So do your research. Don't pick your trainer lightly. Then, once you've kind of got through the loud noise and all the shiny lights, and you've found a trainer or a series of trainers who seem to get the results that you want to get out of them, you want to get out of yourself, then speak to them. Do you vibe with them? What you have to remember about personal training is that it is very personal, very, very personal. And all trainers have very, very different styles. Now, my style of personal training has and always will be quite brutal. I've done this myself. I've gone through the journey, and generally what I've found is that 99% of people just need some tough love. They need to understand that the things they have been doing up until this point were probably wrong, otherwise they would be where they want to be. They need to be called on their own bullshit. That's my style, but that style doesn't necessarily work for everyone. So it's important to look at how you match up to somebody else and how they are going to be able to communicate with you. For anyone who wants to read a book on that subject, one that my brother Graham put me onto quite a while ago, I'm Surrounded by Idiots. It's in my bookshelf in the other case just through there. It talks about the kind of color profiling of different people and how they match. And when you can identify yourself, you may be able to identify someone else, even by their Instagram profile, or when you have a face-to-face chat with them. So from a client point of view, that's what you want to be looking for. Now that we've gone through what makes a good trainer, the next question that stood out to me in this last batch was, how did you filter out the bullshit in the industry? And this kind of goes back to what I was just saying about the kind of bright flashing lights and loud voices. Now, when I first started PTing, social media wasn't really a thing. It was the early days of Facebook. Instagram didn't exist when I first started PTing. And back then, things were a lot easier. There was a lot less bullshit, or maybe there was a lot of bullshit, but it certainly didn't get the attention that it gets today. Now, getting through that, honestly, the way to get through that kind of stuff generally is to fall for it, I think. And for me, when I say fall for it, I put an awful lot of time and effort in my first 1 to 2 years as a personal trainer. I did every single course going, from various weight training courses, every nutrition course I could find, boxing courses, power plate courses, TRX courses, Viper courses, inflatable bag courses, water bag courses, sandbag courses, you name it. I did absolutely everything, thinking the more I know, the more value I'm going to be able to deliver to my clients. And I would say when I got into my kind of second year, I felt like I was spinning my wheels a bit, and I thought, hang on, all of this stuff I've learned, has it really helped me, or has it taken me further from what I should be focusing on? And what I should have been focusing on was the basics. It was weight training. It was getting people to habitually eat a lot better. So all of the shiny machines and all the shiny marketing and all of these great little fads and phases that the industry goes through, I realized after about 2 years that it was great to have done them, because I learned what not to do. And I also met a lot of fascinating people. You know, my network through the fitness industry improved, and that was a great thing. But I learned kind of what not to do by doing it. So I think the first thing, for those of you who maybe are new to the industry as personal trainers, is you're going to fall for some bullshit. You are, but that's a good thing. Those mistakes are going to help you develop and move forwards. What I would say though, is always be willing to reflect on what you have listened to, what you've heard, what you've read. And it's important to find context. One of the things that I found from, say, knowing Charles Poliquin, may he rest in peace, but I was very, very fortunate in that working with UP and working with Nick, I also had a good friendship, and I spent a lot of time with Charles. He was out training in our gyms, both in London and out here in Marbella quite a lot. And one of the things that I found with being around his network is that Charles had an enormous following, and rightfully so, of disciples who I think very often misinterpreted the things he said and the stories he came out with and didn't understand the context. Now, let me explain that a bit. Let me just qualify that. Is that very, very often I see these trainers who are incredibly book smart, who go on about this study and that study and all of this crap that, yes, in theory, it is correct, but in the real world, things happen slightly differently. Now, one of the things Charles used to put across, and Charles is one of the best storytellers I've ever known. When he said something, when he came out with something in a lecture or a course, he found a way to make it real, because he had a story, he had so much information, he had a story about it, and he could say, this is what happened at this time. And he always gave you context. It was an NHL hockey player in a 6-month season before X, and we did this, and this. So you've got all of these little bookworms writing this down and going through the folders and blah, 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 blah. And then the next one could have been a Canadian shot putter. The next one could have been an NFL star. Always gave the details of that specific situation. Now, what happened then? What people tend to pick up on is this was the method with which he achieved this result. What they didn't think about was NHL player, National Hockey League, NFL, National Football League, Olympic shot putter, not a fucking 45-year-old mother of 3 who's never trained before. So why are you giving them the same protocols that Charles recommended during that course? He put it in context, you took it out of context. You did not apply it in the correct situation. I think that's the important thing. All of the information out there, loads of it is bullshit. Yes, absolutely loads of it is bullshit, and you do need to filter it. But one of the best ways of filtering it is understanding how to put it in the correct context, how to take everything, learn everything, speak to as many people as possible, get as many opinions as possible, read as much as possible, watch as much as possible, but take the context, extract what is relevant to you, and then understand where you should be using it and how you should be using it. Because, you know, Gloria, our 45-year-old mother of 3 who works 12 hours a day in the NHS, does not need 57 supplements and 3 2-hour training sessions per day like an NHL player. It's not going to work for them. They can't do it. It's not realistic. It was out of context. So number one is you'll filter through the bullshit by suffering because of the bullshit. Number two, if you want a bit of a head start on how to learn from it, is listen to everything, but question everything. Question everything, because any good teacher, anyone who is genuinely putting out solid information, will be able to sit and say, well, actually, if you think about it like this, etc., etc., they won't suddenly get defensive about the information they're putting out there, trying to deliver value. And if they genuinely are, they will help to explain it. If you question it, they will appreciate you questioning it. Once you've questioned it, make it your own. Understand how it applies to you and then how it applies to your clients. That's how you filter through some of the bullshit in industry, but it isn't easy. And I would finish that one off by saying, don't believe everything you see on social media, because social media is full of cunts. Right, next up. Again, different communication styles for a trainer. So this is, again, probably come from a personal trainer. And it touches upon what I mentioned a minute ago with everyone has a different style. For sure, everybody has a different style. Some people are slightly quieter, some people are louder, some people are more intense, some people are more menacing. Now, I've mentored a lot of trainers in my career by this stage, and you see different styles develop. No one style works better than any other style. Now, you as a client, for clients listening to this, you may say, yeah, but I want someone who's going to really shout at me and go for it. Others will say, I don't want someone shouting at me. Others really want to learn a lot more about the technical side of things and they love the education. Some of them don't. They just kind of want to blindly follow but be accountable. The key to good communication with your client is adaptability. It's understanding how to get the best out of that client. And honestly, that's only really going to come with experience. Any young PTs out there who really struggle with this, it's to understand that number one, your way might not be the right way for every client. So be prepared to adapt if needs be. Number two, be as adaptable as possible. And that is going to come from experience. It's going to come from sitting there and doing it, standing there and doing it, and drilling into as many clients as you possibly can over a short or long career. Before I kind of moved away from gym floor PT, I'd done about somewhere, I estimate, between 15 and 18,000 hours of one-to-one PT before I stopped doing one-to-one in gym PT. Now, that gave me quite a lot of experience. It allowed me to adapt to different types of clients. It also gave me the confidence, and this is key, the confidence to know that what I say works. I've done this for long enough. I've delivered enough results from enough types of people that I know what I say works, and that confidence is going to transmit to the client. So make sure over time you know what you're doing, that you learn, that you get better. The better you are at your job, the more you know, the better you're going to be able to transmit that to clients. And that's going to give them a lot more confidence to put trust in you. But be adaptable. All clients are slightly different. Your style may not suit every single client. And for those of you who have fairly good relationships with your client, ask them. Clients are paying you to give them something in return. They may want something slightly different. And usually, in order to get the best out of their money, they're going to be able to tell you, look, I really don't like it when you scream and shout at me, but what I do like is this. I want to be supported a little bit more. I don't want to be screamed at. Have a good open level of communication and trust with your client. And what you will find is that everything starts to work better. Now, that being said, again, in my experience, and one of the reasons I think I developed my style was because everybody at some point needs to be called on their bullshit. Most clients will try to find evidence to support whatever theory they want to support. They will try to find a reason for doing this. They will try to find a reason for cheating. They'll try to find a reason for that. That is human nature. It's not them being a bad person. It's not them making your life difficult or disrespecting you by saying something or not doing something you've asked. It is within their nature to try and find a way to cheat or make something more efficient or justify the things that they're actually feeling quite guilty about. So sometimes, every now and then, you just need to sit them down and give them a reality check. That reality check can sometimes has to be brutal. You have to put it on them hard. And then hopefully it will get through to them. What I would say is try to educate them. Try to help them understand why what they are doing isn't necessarily the right way. Try to help them understand why what they are doing or what they have read isn't necessarily the correct thing for them. It may be the correct thing for someone, but not necessarily for them. Again, it comes back to some of the stuff that I said, that a lot of Charles Poliquin's disciples really did misinterpret quite badly. So make sure they understand, and this means you need to understand fully in order to transmit that with adequate amounts of confidence. Okay, so communication styles for trainer. Understand that yours isn't necessarily the right way, and prepare to be adaptable. And that adaptability does come with time. I think a key thing is going to be managing expectations as well. Let the client know who you are, what you want out of them before you take their money. Very important. Next question. If I could change one thing about the fitness industry, what would it be? This is a pretty easy one. It will be two things mainly, let's say, rather than keeping it to one. The first one, and this is something that Nick says, and I'm not going to claim this one because when he said it, it's completely right, is the barrier to entry is far too low for personal training. We've seen this massively. I'm talking to you right now, it's Boxing Day 2021. We've had 2 years of COVID now. And what I saw during COVID was everyone and their dog and their dog's turd in the garden decided to become an online trainer in 2021. And guess what? Not a problem. Every training provider out there whose courses are already shit and don't really teach the correct stuff and certainly don't qualify someone to manage someone's health and well-being, they all decided, right, we'll put online training courses out there, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do the other, and they're all turd. The barrier for entry to this career is far too low, especially when you consider what you are dealing with. The danger that if you don't know what you're doing, the danger you could be putting somebody in, and fuck me, do I see it every single day in various gyms I travel to around the world. I see some dumb shit from PTs and clients falling for it because that PT has a professional or an expert badge on their chest. It is not the case. The barrier to entry is too low. Now, to put into context, why does that happen? Generally, the industry, there are exceptions to this. It's not a hard and fast rule, but generally the industry is full of people who are, number one, failed athletes. People who maybe got into sport of some kind, but either weren't good enough or got an injury of some kind, but they were physically inclined and then decided to move into this career. Another one would be a type of person who doesn't like office work. They don't want to go into an office, they don't want to work a 9 to 5, they don't like sitting there on the phones at an insurance company or blah, 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 blah. But they also didn't really want to qualify something really, really difficult. So they thought, fuck it, hang on. Well, how can I make whatever 100 grand a year from something I enjoy? Well, bugger it, I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, I'm going to do that. Okay? Either failed athlete or someone who wanted to try and avoid admin work or office work, etc., etc. Now, those are generalizations. That's not the whole industry. I know some unbelievable people in this industry who've come from different walks of life and have got into the industry for exactly the right reasons. So that is a generalization, I know, but to give you a more broad view of the industry. Now, if these people wanted to earn a similar amount of money, let's say average earning for a trainer is anywhere between like 30 and 60,000 a year, for example. In order to earn that amount of money from a different career, you would have to be a doctor. So you're going to have to do 5 to 7 years of medical school. Doctor, 5 to 7 years of study and a lot of expense. You could maybe be a pilot. That's going to cost you 65 grand and 2 or 3 years. You could be an accountant. That's going to be, what's AAT and ACCA? That's going to be 3 to 5 years to be a chartered accountant. You could be an architect. That's going to be 7 years. Okay, so we've got, let's say, an average of 5 years study to step into a career like that, to step into a career that's going to earn you that kind of money. Personal training, as a CrossFit coach, you can qualify online in 2 days. 2 days. I did it as an experiment at the beginning of lockdown. 2 days, you can go from not having ever lifted a barbell to qualifying as a CrossFit coach and being able to open a gym, CrossFit gym, as a level 3 certified personal trainer. 4 to 6 weeks online. You don't really have to step foot in a gym or have had stepped foot in a gym before that. 4 to 6 weeks versus 5 to 7 years, and to enter a career at a similar pay grade. You see why this is so attractive to people, especially attractive to people who don't really want to work or read or study or do any of these things. Now, that immediately puts the industry kind of at the bottom of the rung, and it's a shame because these people have got into the industry because they don't like learning, but it's extraordinarily important that in order to be good in this industry, or not necessarily good because if you can market yourself very well, you can earn a lot of money, but in order to genuinely keep your clients safe and deliver value, yes, you do have to learn it. It's unavoidable. You're going to have to work long hours. So that is my biggest pet peeve with the industry, is the barrier to entry is too low, but also you can understand why. What should happen, what's the solution to that, because it's all very well bitching about it. The solution to that is to regulate it better, is for there to be certain standards of misconduct, which means that you get your license to be a personal trainer taken away. These are the things that should be happening. You know, the CPD points and things like the reps register, just pointless. Reps in the UK, for example, is, from my opinion, not that of anybody else, certainly not UP. My opinion is that they're just there to try and swipe some money. It's a good subscription model to swipe money off of personal trainers when it doesn't mean shit. Reps accredited trainer doesn't mean shit. You don't have to be reps accredited, and you can still work as a personal trainer. Most countries around the world, you don't even need a qualification to be a trainer. Where I am here in Spain, Marbella especially, there are probably more personal trainers in one local gym than there are members. Why? Because number one, you don't need to be qualified in order to be a personal trainer here. Number two, they all train anyway. Number three, they fancy a bit of extra money. And some of the things we see in these gyms, it's absolutely appalling. So there it is. My biggest kind of pet peeve in this industry, one of the things that I would love to change, that would be it. The second part would be misinformation on social media. I would love to see social media regulated in that the content that people put out, I don't want to turn into China or anything like that, monitor everything, but some of the stuff I see on social media and the stuff that consumers fall for, clients fall for, because again, loud voices, big shiny lights and people who look great, is just not only wrong, it's straight up dangerous and stupid. I would love to see that kind of thing regulated. And clueless celebrities jumping on the bandwagon, you know, a good example of all of this that I've just been through is celebrities that get off a reality TV show. The easiest way to set up a subscription model is to do it in fitness, which is why everybody does it. And then obviously the consumer falls for it. Very simple. So that will be it. Now, kind of moving past the more PT focused stuff to some degree. Keeping motivation high to train. How do you keep your motivation high all of the time? Write this down, get yourself a pen and paper. It's going to be valuable to some of you. I'm going to take a drink of water. You can't keep motivation high all of the time. Motivation is not an infinite thing. It is finite. It runs out. It goes up and it goes down. That is inevitable. It is okay. It doesn't make you any worse. It doesn't make you any better. It doesn't make you a lesser human. It certainly shouldn't make you feel bad about yourself. Motivation is something that is going to run out at times. And generally, the harder you are motivated, you know, it's kind of one of those things, it fatigues quicker. The brighter the flame, the quicker it burns out. And you're going to need time to rest and recover. So with that out of the way, what is the best way to stay motivated? The best way to stay motivated is to put yourself in a positive position as often as possible. What that means, it means dependent on your nature, one of two things is going to have to happen here. And this may not help some of you, but hopefully you can put yourself in a position, because a lot of you out there are going to know, yeah, you know, this one sounds like me. A large part of it is going to be from yourself. If you're training yourself, if you're doing something for yourself, doesn't have to be personal training, doesn't have to be training, doesn't have to be weights, can be job or work or study, is you have two options for goal setting. Option number one, and what I tend to find works for the majority of people, 95%, is to set manageable goals. If you set a goal that is too brutal, too far out of reach, too far away, or a little bit unrealistic, then of course you're going to fail, then your motivation is going to dive. It's going to tumble hard. What do I mean by that? So let me put it into a really, really easily understandable context. Right now I'm recording this podcast on December 26th. In the new year, what most people do is they go from this period of vast overeating, loads of drink, loads of food, loads of shit, calories, going absolutely mental. We go from that period of overeating. As soon as January 2nd, 3rd hits, we take away all of our carbs, we strip out a couple of thousand calories, and we're basically nearly starving ourselves. So we go from one extreme to the other. We've created an unrealistic and unsustainable change, which inevitably results in some level of failure. When we hit that level of failure, what then happens? We start to feel shit about ourselves and we throw everything out the window for a few days until we get our logic back, we've stopped thinking emotionally, and we try and start again. And we repeat that cycle 7 or 8 times during the year. You set unrealistic goals. You tried to do too much with your nutrition. For example, you took away too many calories. Why not take away fewer calories to create a smaller yet still effective deficit, which is going to allow you to move forwards consistently without the peaks and troughs and without fucking up. Same applies to your training. If you know that you can commit to 3 or 4 sessions a week, then why the fuck are you going to the gym 6 or 7 times a week or trying twice a day to catch up with what you did over Christmas? It's not sustainable and you're going to end up failing. Not only that, but there's a whole host of physical, chemical reactions, neurotransmitter issues that are going to be caused by that excessive training or excessive dieting, which plays havoc with your brain and therefore your motivation. So number one, set manageable goals. That's what most people are going to have to do properly. Now, on that goal, it has to be important enough. In order to be motivated, that goal has to really mean something to you. Now, how would you define it means something to you? Because most people, the reason they don't really focus on something is because the goal simply doesn't mean enough. It really doesn't. you need to set a goal that's going to change your life. Is it going to change your life? Is it going to bring about something that really is special to you? If it is, that's going to be strong enough for you to focus on it relentlessly, even at the times when you don't want to. So make sure you're setting an appropriate goal. When you've set the appropriate goal, then you work backwards from it, creating the manageable goals I just spoke about. That'll be the way to do it. Now, there is this other 5% of people. Some of you out there may be in this group. For you, the smaller, easier, more manageable goal may not necessarily be the way. Some of you like to absolutely redline it and will genuinely respond better for redlining it. So it's setting a bigger goal, a more extreme goal, something that is more important to you. And I mean the long-term goal. Your bite-sized goals along the journey still need to be manageable. You still need to be able to hit them with frequency in order to understand you're going in the right way. But the main goal, the big goal at the end, needs to be a big one. It needs to scare you. It needs to mess with you a little bit, possibly keep you awake at night every now and then. For that 5% of people, those of you who are hyper-driven, your goal needs to be big enough, because so long as you're aiming at that's super, super, super fucking high, even if you miss it, you're still going to end up pretty damn high, and higher than a lot of other people maybe would, or maybe you would have if you'd have set less lofty goals. So again, 95% of you are in the other group. Set smaller, manageable goals that you can hit with frequency. Do not go to extremes. That's going to be the best way to keep your motivation up. For that other 5% of you, maybe even 3% of you, set bigger goals, something that's really going to push you. Ensure that your motivation, your goal and your why is genuinely life-changing. Is it going to have such a huge effect on you? Now, the reason I say that is because a lot of people get too offended easily these days, far, far too offended. And whether it's fat shaming, whether it's this or it's bullying or blah, 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 blah. Now, there is some positivity in negativity. There is positivity in sadness. There is positivity in desperation. Why? Because you are most ready for change when you're desperate, when you're backed against the wall, when you feel horrible. And that feeling deep down inside you says, anything is better than where I am right now. And when anything is better than where you are right now, you'll do anything you fucking can to get out of it, to push forwards and move. So that desperation, that sadness is a good thing. It is a point where you are going to be ready to change. It's a catalyst for change. So again, these are going to be things that push you forward. This is why, for example, when do most people get in the best shape of their life? After a breakup, when they're heartbroken, they're feeling bad about themselves. They're so focused on moving forwards that they absolutely motor through. They diet well, they train hard, they study, they change their job, they start to do things that are productive and make them feel better about themselves and get their self-confidence back. There's a reason for that. So make sure your why is big enough and strong enough, and that genuinely that end goal is going to change your life. And then the stepping stones towards it, make them manageable. That's going to be the best way. But again, finishing note, motivation is not infinite. It comes up, it goes down, it comes up, it goes down. It's going to be back and forth, and be okay with that. You're not always going to be on point, but what you can do is use those tools I've just mentioned in order to manage your journey towards it. The next question I got here was the best way to improve adherence. Now, I've basically just covered that. In my last subject, I've just covered that. The best way to improve adherence, let's say from a trainer to client point of view here, is going to be number one, something I see a lot of people not doing well: manage expectations. Understand what is possible with what you're prepared to put in. 99% of clients I've ever met in my life who don't have any knowledge or any experience in what is about to happen seem to think they know way more about what's possible than the trainer telling them what to do does. Not the case. Almost always not the case. So whether you are a trainer telling your client, make sure you manage their expectations, or you are yourself understanding what's ahead of you, manage your own expectations, understand what is possible by what you're putting in. If you're putting in 80% effort, you're probably going to get 50 to 60% of the result you want. If you're putting in 100% effort, gradually you're going to get to the result you want, but it really does matter that you're pushing hard and manage your expectations, because if you don't manage your expectations, you have unrealistic ideas of what you can achieve and what time scale, and this goes for everything, it's not just health and fitness, you're going to be disappointed. When you're disappointed, this is when your motivation starts to drop. It's not because you set the wrong goals, you did this, you just had completely unrealistic expectations of what was going to happen, how fast it was going to happen, and how hard or easy it was going to be. manage expectations. That is going to be the best way to help with your compliance and your adherence from both a trainer to a client and client to client. Now, this again goes into goal setting. Set goals. Make sure you are setting a goal, both short term and I would usually say medium term. Long term goals for personal training clients tend not to be that effective purely because they're so far away and things change. You know, having that path set out towards the goal is important, but you also need to be prepared to adapt along the way and move around obstacles as they occur. But for improving adherence and compliance, set goals. Understand where you need to be at certain times, at what points you need to be at certain times in order to make sure you continually move forwards towards that medium or long-term goal. Sounds easy? It's not, otherwise everyone will be doing it. And then your why. Again, we go back to make sure your goal, make sure your reason why is strong enough. Make sure it's going to change your life. Make sure it's going to bring enough positivity to you to really matter. You know, if someone, let's say, has had their third heart attack and they've been told by their doctor that, listen, if this happens again, you're never seeing your kids again, you're going to be in a box 6 foot under the ground. That person is probably going to be an awful lot more focused on improving their health than your average person who's quickly read an article in a magazine and they thought, oh, yeah, no, I should probably do that. Why? Because there's something at stake. Their life is in the balance. Something is going to happen if they do not do this. Now, I'm not saying all of you need to be in that position, but you need to have something that's strong enough to really push you towards that goal and keep pushing you towards that goal, even when you don't want to be doing it. Next up, is metabolic adaptation a thing? This is an interesting one in that in the short term, yes, I believe it is. In the short term, yes, I believe it is. Now, by that, I mean, during acute phases of dieting, i.e., let's say for a fitness competitor who's dieting down to low calories in order to get super lean for a show, is their metabolism going to slow down based on the amount of food going in? Yes, potentially it is. I do think that's going to happen. I've seen it happen to some degree. Obviously, I'm not hooking people up to calorie monitors for any of you book monkeys out there who want to pipe up, but generally, yes, someone is going to adapt metabolically, and by that, for anyone who's listening to this doesn't understand what that means, is that their metabolism, the system by which, or that regulates how many calories you burn day to day during daily activities and during rest, starts to down-regulate, so you start to burn less calories than you were, say, a few weeks ago. In acute phases of dieting, yes, I do believe that happens. However, one of the things I hear an awful lot is people saying, my metabolism has crashed because of X, X, and X. In the long term, I don't know the science behind this officially because it's quite inconclusive. It is quite inconclusive. There isn't enough information out there currently. But in my experience in the real world, no, it doesn't happen long term. Generally, people who think that they've got some level of metabolic damage are just eating like idiots. They're not doing what they should be doing. They're not resting well enough. They're not sleeping well enough. Not drinking enough water. They're too stressed. They're taking in crappy food. They're still drinking at weekends. What they tend to do and what we tend to do as human beings is we try to find a reason to justify our failures. If we're not doing or we're not succeeding in what we want to do, we'll try to find a reason why. It's what we've always done as a species, what we will continue to always do. So if you're not being compliant in your diet, you've not lost weight, you've not done this, you've not done that, then to say, my metabolism's slow because of this, it's a really, really easy way out. Super easy way out. Almost always, exclusively when I've heard somebody say that, when we put them on considerably more calories than they've ever eaten, but of great nutrient-dense food, guess what happens? They start to lose fat like a rocket. Metabolism hasn't adapted in the way they think it has. Does it happen to some? Yes, possibly. Does it happen in an acute phase, an acute dieting cycle? Yes, absolutely it does. But long term, is it going to cause a huge amount of damage to you? Generally, no, not to the degree that people say. Yes, it will, but not to the degree that a lot of you try to justify. The fact that you're not losing fat is rarely because of your metabolism. It's because your habits and the things you do every single day are simply a bit shit, and you need to fix them. So going into the dieting thing, we'll just have a quick scan over this one. What happens and how do you get back out of that if your metabolism has adapted? Now, if you are in an acute cycle of dieting and your metabolism has started to adapt and it's getting slower because your calories are going lower, few options. Number one, reset your diet. Take your calories way back up, if only for a week or two, in order to up-regulate your metabolism, get your body burning more calories. again, and then start to create a deficit again. That's one of the tools we use on the LiveUP plan in order to keep people moving. If they go down, we diet them down. If their calories start to edge lower than I'm comfortable with, we reset the diet up to full amounts and then repeat that cycle. So it looks like waves like that. Other option, refeeds. If you want to stay low calorie or low carb or low calorie, then you can add additional refeeds, which can bring your calories back up to maintenance or above maintenance for a day or 2, 3 days a week, whatever, in order to keep you keep your metabolism from adapting and dropping down too slow. Carbs are stimulatory, so carb cycling in that way or adding refeeds is going to help to upregulate the metabolism in the short term and keep you from getting too much of a metabolic slowdown in the later stages of dieting. So those are 2 really good strategies to use, or 3 strategies even. You can reset your diet up to higher calories, you can carb cycle, or you can add refeeds. Very, very simple. Now, final note, just because it'll be something you remember at the end of this, the way to think about metabolic adaptation, and I think the majority of you should be able to see this really easily. If you go into your iPhone after you've watched this video or you've listened to this podcast, if you go in there and you go to your battery, in your settings, general settings, go to your battery, and in there you'll see something called low power mode. If you hit low power mode, it says just below it that it switches off all of the background processes in your body because there's not enough power and you need to preserve battery. That essentially is what's happening when you suffer some level of metabolic adaptation. If you imagine that the food going into your body, the nutritional intake, is your battery. When that power is low, the input is low, you're not taking in enough calories, your body says, okay, I'm not taking in as much as I need to run all of my processes efficiently. I need to down-regulate, I need to shut some stuff off in order to be able to sustain myself long-term on this level of energy. So your body switches on that low power mode and it shuts off a lot of background tasks or down-regulates the energy usage for the body on a lot of other things, which obviously is not optimal for your health. It's not going to keep you healthy. It's not going to allow you to have maximum energy, etc. So that's essentially what's happening when you hear people talk about metabolic adaptation, and the strategies I've mentioned can help you out of it in a shorter term dieting phase. For longer term, how much does your metabolism adapt? Not as much as most of you think. Is there some adaptation? Yes, possibly, but I think a lot of you justify your failures by saying it's something like that, which is not necessarily a good thing for you to do. Call yourself on your own bullshit and do things right. If you are one of the few people that has suffered from that, then again, the way to do it, build your calories up gradually, make sure you're carb cycling. That'll be really beneficial for you. All right, we're on the last 3 questions now, folks. For anyone who's still listening, congratulations. Can you lose fat and gain muscle at the same time? Yes, absolutely you can. Now, there is a continuum where everybody is going to fall on this. The newer you are to training, the easier this is going to be because you're going to adapt really, really well to nearly everything. Now, what I would say is if you're in a huge calorie deficit, a silly calorie deficit, unreasonably large, then it's going to be much, much more difficult for this process to happen. You're going to really struggle to build muscle and burn fat at the same time. So let's say you're somewhere around maintenance or just below, then yes, absolutely you can for sure. What is the best way to do this? Now, again, in my experience, the way to think about building muscle whilst burning fat is to consider the calories as the tool to burn fat. Okay, consider the calories the tool to burn fat. So put yourself in a small deficit, 200, 250 calories, something similar to that, and your body is going to start to drop fat. The calories deal with the fat loss. The macronutrients are going to help you to deal with the muscle gain. So if we are in a small deficit, but we have our macronutrients set up correct, then we're going to be able to build muscle at the same time, providing there's a couple of other variables, which I'll talk about in a minute. Now, what do I mean by that? Is if we're in this small deficit, but we carb cycle effectively, and carb cycling is a great tool for building muscle while burning fat. Carb cycling is putting yourself in a slight deficit on, let's say, non-training days of glucose, carbohydrates, and potentially calories. But then you go to maintenance or surplus on your training days in the form of extra carbohydrates to facilitate the additional training you're doing. If you're taking an adequate amount of carbs and recovering well, you're going to be able to build muscle. You're going to be able to shuttle all of that protein into the muscle whilst remaining in a small deficit. So for those of you who want a few tools, and we can go into this much deeper on another podcast, but for those of you who want to understand how to do it, think about calories for fat loss, macronutrient split for muscle building. So carb cycle, be lean enough to carb cycle first, but put yourself in a small deficit and you'll be able to do both at the same time. Now, one of the main factors that a lot of you suffer from when trying to build muscle and burn fat at the same time is you simply don't recover well enough. You're training too much, too often, or for too long. Now, it's important for everybody to understand that muscle grows when it is resting. Muscle grows when it is recovering. It does not grow whilst you're in the gym. What you're doing in the gym, what you're doing while you're lifting weights is breaking the muscle tissue down. You're causing damage. So if you're always in the gym, you're always causing damage. It never gets the ability to rebuild, and certainly not rebuild stronger. So it's important to understand you need adequate amounts of recovery between training sessions and between training muscle groups. If you're not doing that, you're not going to grow. So a lot of you out there who maybe train 5 or 6 days a week and are wondering why you can't build a load of muscle whilst burning fat, it's because you don't give the muscle a chance to recover. But what you are doing is burning loads and loads of calories. So you're losing fat. You just can't build any muscle. Make sense? Whereas if you put yourself in the same deficit, but you allowed enough rest time and recovery time between sessions for the muscles to fully recover and grow, you would actually start to grow. So that's the other factor that most people get wrong. You're not resting well enough, you're not sleeping well enough, you're not recovering well enough. So my strategy for this and what I advise you do, small calorie deficit, let the calories take care of the fat loss. Get your macronutrients in a good position to build muscle. That would be carb cycling. The bigger the carb cycle, the better, but that's going to be dependent on how lean you are, and ensure you are recovering. Remember that muscle grows while you are resting, not while you're in the gym. All you're doing in the gym is breaking it down. An analogy for that I like to use is imagine you are building a house. That's what's building the muscle is. You're building a house. For every brick you put down, some cock end comes off, takes a brick and throws it away. You put another one down, they take it away. You put another one down, they take it away. You can never build that house. It never gets bigger. That's what's happening if you're training too often. All you're doing is taking bricks away. You're never allowing time for the house to build. Make sense? All right, Dan. All right. Next up, best way to maintain a calorie deficit. Simple question here. Very, very simple question, and one I've answered in this podcast already. Don't try to go to extremes. This is really, really, really important. If you try to go to extremes, if you try to take away too many calories, you're going to fail. If you try to take away entire food groups, you're probably going to fail. Now, don't get me wrong. If you favor certain types of diets and they help you stay on point, then fine, go for it. Whatever helps you stay on that diet is the best diet for you. But if you create too large a calorie deficit, too big a nutrient deficit, your appetite is going to go crazy. You're not going to be able to live with it. If you try and say, I'm never going out with my friends, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to do this, chances are you're going to fail. When you fail, it creates a negative psychological loop and a negative mindset, a resentment towards dieting and training, and then you end up screwing everything up and throwing the towel in. So first port of call when you are trying to maintain a calorie deficit is set a manageable one. You are better off spending 6 months in a small calorie deficit and getting yourself absolutely shredded over a longer term than trying to put yourself in a massive calorie deficit, dieting really, really hard for 2 weeks, then fucking everything up, then having to restart a week and a half later, doing the same thing, and you spend the entire year starting, failing. You get to December next year, you're in exactly the same spot. Nothing has changed on your body. Whereas if you'd have just committed and said, right, I'm going to give it 6 months in a small deficit, you'd have got shredded in that time. By summer, you'd be ripped to pieces, loving your body, self-confidence is super high, and it's a lot easier to stay lean than it is to get lean. The problem is, when we're looking forwards, we're saying, there's no way I'm going to let this take 6 months. Not going to happen. It's too far away. We can't focus that far. So you try and do it in 4 to 6 weeks. Everything falls apart. Think long term and everything will fall into place, and it will come a lot faster than you think. When you look back at the previous 6 months, all of you right here are probably going to look back and say, God, I can't believe it's Christmas already. It feels like it was July 2 months ago. Whereas when you look forward to July, I think, oh God, July is so far away. That's how things work. Understand, take from the experience of your life so far, that looking back, it's never that far. Plan for the long term, put yourself in a smaller calorie deficit, and you're going to be much, much better. Second strategy to use there is to understand that a lot of appetite control specifically and the feelings of well-being is not down to calories. And I think, again, this is a theory. This is not something I can prove, but certainly from my experience over the years, it has told me that the calories are a lot less important in a deficit than nutrients. You can be in a pretty large deficit, But if you're taking in loads and loads of nutrients, your body's absolutely fine with it and you don't have any problems. Okay, think about that. If you are, let's say for example, you go to McDonald's and you eat a McDonald's meal, let's say 14 to 1600 calories worth of McDonald's Big Mac meal. Pretty much empty calories, no nutrients, all got crap in it. You go to McDonald's, you have a Big Mac meal, you have all of this shit, and then an hour and a half later, you're like, I'm a bit hungry, I'm peckish. You've literally just had 1500 calories worth of food, but an hour and a half later, you're peckish. Why? Because there was no nutrients in that food. Now, let's take probably what happened for most of you yesterday. You ate a Christmas dinner, probably 1200 calories, probably actually less, let's say including all of your desserts, everything, probably even less than your average Big Mac meal with a shake. The difference being that a Christmas dinner is jam-packed full of nutrients, loads of vegetables, good quality meats, tons and tons of nutrients, vitamins and minerals going into your body. You're not hungry for the next 10, 12 hours. Maybe you pick at some sweets, maybe you pick at some quality streets, whatever it happens to be. You're not hungry. You ate less calories, but your appetite is completely satisfied for the rest of the day versus something like a McDonald's, something with no nutrients in it, and you're hungry an hour and a half later. Why is that? Is it because your body needs X amount of calories to operate, or is it because it needs X amount of nutrients to operate well? And a byproduct of those nutrients are the calories that are in the foods that those nutrients contain. So you can stay in a much bigger deficit for much, much longer, providing you're nourishing your body with the right foods. Now, how do you do that? You eat foods, not products. You make sure you are taking in foods, not products. Think about that. If it's gone through a process in order to get on your plate, stay away from it. Eat loads and loads of vegetables. Eat loads and loads of fruit. Make sure your meat intake is high quality. Make sure your carb intake is high quality. If you do that, you're going to be ultra well nourished, and you may be quite surprised by how much less hungry you are day to day. One of the things that happens on the LiveUP plan, one of the online plans that I run, is that when people join the plan, they can't eat the amount of food that I ask them to eat. It's too much for them. They simply can't eat it. Even though as soon as they start losing a load of fat. Why? Because they're in a calorie deficit based on what they were eating before, because they're eating shit, but they've got no appetite because they feel like they're eating too much. You're eating less calories than you were before, but now you can't eat it because you feel like you're eating too much. Why? Because your body is fully nourished. It says, dude, I'm cool, I don't need any more food. You're giving me everything I need today. I'm going to operate awesomely. I'm going to help you sleep amazingly. I'm going to make you strong as fuck in the gym. We're going to be super productive at work because you've given me everything I need. I don't need any more. I'm not going to ask you for more calories. So think about that. Try and stay in a deficit. Make sure it is manageable. Think long-term, not short-term. And think nutrients within that calorie deficit. Make sure you're taking a lot of the right foods, and you will find, hopefully, that your appetite is much, much more under control, and sleep well as well. It's very, very important. Very, very important. Right, on to the last question. I'm going to close this one, and I've just mentioned it there on LiveUP. What is LiveUP? LiveUP is a plan that I run online. It's an online training plan. It's kind of a subscription plan where I deliver fresh training plans to you every single month. Yeah, full nutrition guide. We do live online classes. We have a community forum. And it's a results-based plan. It's not about bright lights and shiny pictures and this, that, and the other. It's about teaching you both the theory and the practice of training hard, training consistently, training well, and allowing you to educate yourself on the strategies that I've discussed in this podcast. Now, that's LiveUP in a nutshell. Why is LiveUP? When we're going back about nearly 6 years now, 5 or 6 years, I guess, 5 years, let's say. I created the plan. It was initially for females only. It was called 6Fit. Now, the reason I created that is because I was getting super frustrated. I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, I was getting super frustrated of the misinformation in the industry and on social media regarding female training. And the point that it was getting to was, it was damaging people's health. It was damaging females' health, not just physical, but also mental health. The industry was becoming something that I really, really didn't like to be a part of. And I was getting myself into a bit of a negative mindset about it. And I thought, well, okay, I know what I want to do. I help my own female clients do XXX. How can I spread that word a little bit better? How can I help more people? How can I open things up a tad? And that was when I thought, well, there's only so many online clients I can take on personally. It was a terrible use of my time doing one-to-one online, because I could only deliver an adequate amount of value, a satisfying amount of value from myself to 20 or 30 people. That was not enough to leave a significant mark. What I needed to do was create a plan that delivered the same amount of value, that improved the mental health and the physical health and the self-confidence of people everywhere, without me having to limit it to a certain amount, that as many people as we needed could go on it. So that was when I created the plan. And what I did was I took all of my programs from the previous years of training, and I looked at everything that had yielded a really, really great result. I looked at all of the ones that yielded lesser results, and I said, right, well, what was wrong with them? Why didn't they work? And I went to the other ones. Why were they so effective? I tried to take out all of the good bits, all of the bad bits, and put in as many good bits into one program as I could. Then I looked at the different types of clients to understand, right, how do I create one program that ticks all boxes for all people? That then became 6 Fit. I released 6 Fit, and in the first 6 months, it absolutely exploded. Results were going absolutely crazy. There are girls 5 or 6 years on now who took on that plan and are still doing it now as LiveUP. 5 or 6 years on, still super lean, still super healthy, still looking incredible, still progressing in their training, sustaining a consistent amount of food intake. They've educated themselves, they're happy to have the self-confidence, they're performing well, and they've understood that the industry is largely full of bullshit. And that was kind of my goal behind that plan. And then LiveUp has obviously developed to a big online platform now, thousands of people on it, extremely effective, extremely fun. My community on there is phenomenal. I absolutely love them. And yeah, that was kind of where LiveUp came from, and how it develops and how it continues to develop over time. It's kind of my baby, and I would say kind of the best achievement in my career, because it allowed me to use my skill set and my experience and the things that I'd learned over years to help as many people as possible. And I've seen a significant effect. I think that's the main thing. I've seen a really, really significant effect for a lot of people, a lot of women especially, on that plan, who have completely changed their lives because of it. It's awesome. And as it picked up momentum, obviously a lot of the guys wanted in as well. So I created one for men. There's a LiveUp for men, which is also extremely effective at delivering results from people of every age. Now, an interesting experiment we did with some of our own employees was some of our office staff in Manchester who wanted to do the plan as well, because they saw all of these crazy results that were happening with everybody else. We said, right, you can do it on the promise that you comply with it. You have to comply. When Nick Mitchell's being your boss and he's telling you, you comply with this or you're in the shit, and you're going to comply with it. So all of these employees jumped on the plan. And this was a great experiment, because when someone is forced to comply, it tests the plan to say, is it really that effective? When compliant, all of the staff got 100% strike rate on transformations. Every single one of them got a transformation, faultlessly. Now, that again was a really proud moment for me. I said earlier that I've been doing this for long enough to know that the information I put out is extremely effective if it's done correctly. I now know that LiveUp is a 100% effective plan if it is done correctly, and I mean genuinely correctly. And that's a really nice feeling for me. So yeah, that's LiveUp, and I look forward to the future of it. I've been trying to make some changes over this Christmas, so it's developing a little bit more. We'll see where it goes and see what the next big project is. I guess my next big project is this podcast. So let's see. So if you've managed to make it, we've just passed the hour mark. I actually thought this was going to be like a half an hour thing. I'd get through it pretty quickly, but do let me know if you've listened to this, whether you want it shorter or it's the right amount, or you got bored senseless in the middle, or you thought it was terrible, or you thought it was great. I'd love to hear, because this is number 1. I will be doing a series of these, but I want to try and make them right for you. So do let me know. The next one is going to be general content. A lot of you have asked me for general content, so I'm going to be moving towards that on the next one, and covering some more kind of lifestyle stuff, less professional things. So look out for that. Again, share this to as many people as you can via the YouTube video, which is up there if you want to see my ugly face chattering along whilst I'm going through this. If you've listened to it on audio, hopefully it's entertained you during some cardio or during a walk or something like that. But it's been my pleasure, and get over to my Instagram at Elliot Upton to give me the content for the next 10 questions podcast, the next series, next episode you want to hear. So be aware of that. I want to answer your questions. Throw them at me. Give me something good. I hope you've enjoyed it. Peace out. Bye, bye, bye.